What does redemption look like in two cultures built on violence? In 1992, Clint Eastwood made Unforgiven, a film that didn't just end the Western, it buried it. It's the story of a killer too old to be romantic, too tired to be heroic, and too haunted to be forgiven. A man who once built his name on violence, now realising that violence built him instead. 20 years later, Japan remade it. Yurusarezaru Mono. The same premise, the same guilt, but this time the cowboy's hat becomes a samurai's top knot, the revolver becomes a katana, and the dusty frontier becomes the dying edge of the Meiji era. Two different countries, two different histories, but one shared obsession. The idea that you can find peace by looking down the barrel of your past. There's a popular saying, don't remake the classics. But if you're going to, you might as well do it with a katana. To understand why Japan remade Unforgiven, we have to start with the original. This wasn't the young Eastwood from The Good, the Bad and the Ugly. This was Eastwood in his 60s, staring down the mythology he'd spent decades building. The Western had always been America's favourite bedtime story. The lone man, the open plains, the clean moral lines. But by 1992, that fantasy was long dead, and Unforgiven is the funeral. It's a film about the cost of the legend. What happens after the gun smoke clears and the hero has to live with what he's done? Eastwood's William Money isn't a hero. He's an outlaw, widowed, broke, and raising pigs. He's the Western's myth in retirement. When he takes one last bounty job, it's not a grand return to glory. It's desperation. And by the end, when he rides back into town for revenge, it's not triumph, it's punishment. The man literally gets redemption by killing everyone, which is one way to do it, I guess. The film says you can't escape what you were. You can only outlive it. Barely. Now jump to 2013. Lee Sung-il's version of Unforgiven. It's a near shot-for-shot remake. But it's not a copy. It's a translation. Eastwood's film was about the end of the Western myth. Lee's version is about the death of the samurai code. Ken Watanabe plays Jubei, once a feared samurai, now a broken farmer in the early Meiji era. Japan is modernizing. Swords are outlawed. Unlike money, Jubei's trying to bury his past beneath the mud of survival. But when he picks up his sword again, it's like watching history claw its way out of the grave. I can't be certain on this fact, but this is purely assumption. Jubei Kamata is a great and deadly samurai, and it's possibly based on a samurai known in Japanese history called Jubei Yagyu Mitsuyoshi. Although not a lot is known about this samurai, but his stories have been passed down through the ages, and many versions of this person live on through different forms of media, such as books like Makai Tensho, which would be adapted into the film Samurai Reincarnation, starring Sony Chiba and directed by Kinji Fukasaku, who you may know as the director of Battle Royale and the Yakuza Papers films. Other appearances include video games like Samurai Showdown and Onimusha, love those games, and of course anime like Ninja Scroll. Now I remember seeing that film when I was like 13 and thinking it was the most badass anime I'd ever seen.
Burn in your golden hell!
Bear in mind, before that I'd seen Akira, so I was living my best life. Anyway, I'm getting off track. The Jubei of Unforgiven may not be the legendary swordsman due to time errors. Sorry, I just love Japanese history and this person always fascinates me. Every swing feels heavier, not because of style, but because of shame. Both Money and Jubei are living relics of violence that no longer has a place in the world. The gunfighter and the samurai, two archetypes born from honour, now rotting in guilt. It's like if Eastwood looked in the mirror and the reflection had subtitles.
I'm gonna kill you. No. Your mama. Yes.
But where America had to reckon with its myth of the gun, Japan had to face its myth of the sword. Two nations that romanticised killers, only to realise the romance was built on corpses. Both films play the same melody, they just change the instrument. In Unforgiven, violence is grimy, chaotic, and stripped of glory. In Yurusarezaru Mono, violence is ritualistic, ceremonial, but just as ugly when the blood hits the ground. Money kills because he's pushed. Jubei kills because he's cornered by history itself. Different languages, same midlife crisis. And what's darkly funny is that both stories pretend to be about one man's redemption, when really they're about two nations trying to forgive themselves. Eastwood's America, a country that mytholized the frontier, then drowned in guilt. Watanabe's Japan, a country that glorified Bushido, then spent a century reckoning with what it cost. They're both cinematic therapy sessions. One of the smartest choices Lee Sang-il made was setting his Unforgiven during Japan's Meiji Restoration. That period, late 1800s, mirrors the American frontier in decay. Both nations were modernizing, both were erasing their pasts, and both were nostalgic for the very violence that kept them trapped. In America, the gun was freedom. In Japan, the sword was honour, and both turned out to be really efficient ways to ruin your life. When Jubei slaughters the corrupt police chief in the final act, it's not heroism, it's history refusing to die quietly. He's not reclaiming his past, he's proving that the past never left. It's the same with Money. That final shootout in the saloon, it's not catharsis. It's relapse. The moment he picks up the gun again, he's become everything he swore off. And the film knows it. When he rides away in the rain, we're not cheering. We're grieving. Because redemption, it turns out, doesn't survive the gunfire. So, what does redemption look like in two cultures built on violence? For Eastwood, redemption means accepting the myth is over, that the Western hero doesn't get a sunset, just a reckoning. For Watanabe, redemption means facing the shame that built the samurai ideal, that the code of honour was really a code of denial. Both films end the same way, with a man disappearing into legend, but they mean totally different things. In America's Unforgiven, he becomes a ghost because we can't face what he did. In Japan's Unforgiven, he becomes a ghost because we can't stop repeating what he did. Two men, two nations, both haunted by the stories they told themselves to make violence look noble. Maybe redemption isn't about finding peace after violence. Maybe it's about realising peace never existed in the first place. Both versions of Unforgiven are tragedies dressed as westerns. Or in Japan's case, jidaigeki. They're mirror images staring back at their own countries, saying, look what we built, but look what it also cost. And in a way, Yurusarezaru Mono doesn't just remake Unforgiven, it forgives it. It understands that no culture has a monopoly on guilt, only different ways of dressing it up. So what does redemption look like in two cultures built on violence? Maybe it looks like this. Two old men, alone in the dark, hoping the world forgets what they've done. Or maybe it looks like us, still watching, still trying to understand why we can't stop making legends out of killers. Some stories aren't meant to be forgiven, but they're still worth telling.